if the result of this outreach for naming of a facility is not unlike others that have occurred in the past. For example, there may have been other facilities where the outreach, generated a name, or not, that the nominations, I guess, the numbers of people that made nominations were as few or maybe less. I just don't recall. While I've been on the board, there haven't been all that many opportunities for naming, and those usually generated quite a number.
My thought is that in the schools that I've been a part of that we've named, that it's usually a function of the type of the facility. Middle schools tend to get more interest than elementary schools do, as an example. And it's also a function of just the basic community that you're trying to reach out to as well. And some places, are, let's go, we got to get these 50 names in, and let the board decide. And other places, you're going to get a fairly small sample return. So that's been my experience with the history of it.
So you're saying that some kind of a multi-use facility like a bus terminal wouldn't necessarily generate a lot of input from the district as a whole?
Well, I'm trying to remember exactly, and Paul's still here, so
Paul's
he
back there.
might know the difference. But when we named what's now NOAC, I think that the number of the numerical number of people that sent in names was fairly small. In contrast, when we named Goritsky as an example, it was 130 or something ungodly like that. But that's kind of the way I remember the example. And
Mr. Turner, can you come to the microphone and just answer this one question? To the best of your recollection, would you repeat the question, Mr. Snyder?
So, Mr. Turner, when we named NOAC, what is now NOAC, okay, what is your recollection of the number of names that were submitted for the naming of that particular facility?
I do not recall exactly how many, Mr. Snyder. I do believe that since that was an athletic facility, there were several names submitted, but I'd have to go back and do some research to be able to tell you exactly how many. Okay.
I just remember the number of the names that was submitted for NOAC being relatively small compared to something else that, like Goritsky as an example, that had a much...
I think you make a good point. Sometimes the district-wide facilities, like a bus terminal, for example, might not generate a larger number of nominees as compared to schools.
Yeah. And my only point is that, I don't know that we can extrapolate and say that, you'll be able to get 50 names. I don't know that that's, going to actually work that way. But my sense is that even if you went back out to the community, it's going to be a pretty small number of names that you get in response.
I'd be personally happy. For the bus terminal, to which we currently refer to as the Mel-Waxter bus terminal, if we call it the Southwest bus Southeast bus terminal for now, and then, naming opportunities will always exist in the future.
Sure.
There we go.
Okay. If there are no further questions on this particular item, okay. Trustees, we're back. We're reconvening on TV. Ms. Moya, you had a question or a issue related to an action item that we had earlier this evening.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to reconsider the board decision on item 5.1, which was the approval of the resolution regarding the use of bond proceeds, providing for the appointment of an oversight committee and addressing matters related to future facility master planning. Do you want to know more about why I'm asking for?
Yes, ma'am, and
Okay.
I'd like to know, counsel, would you just verify that this is parliamentarily correct?
A motion for reconsideration can be made at the same meeting as long as it's on the agenda and as long as it's being made by a person who is on the prevailing side of the
Okay.
vote.
All righty. So would you care to explain your motion or make the motion and then explain it, or explain it and then make it, whichever?
Okay. Board, I move to reconsider the board decision of this evening on item 5.1. And to explain my reasons for bringing this up, during our meeting since we had this vote, I've been thinking about our discussion and the issues that arose from our conversation. And one of Mr. Schneider, one of the names or the words that you suggested as right prior to our voting was utilization rather than master. And I really think that that's a much better word than adding guiding principles. And I really feel like that is much more of a defining term, which I really believe, at least in my understanding of what this is supposed to be doing, is clarification for not only ourselves but for the community as well. In addition, I really, in hindsight, feel like changing the target date for ourselves and giving and saying, or as soon as possible or soon after as possible, changes the spirit of the resolution as it was presented. And I don't want to change the spirit of the resolution. And so if we need to keep a definitive, a hard date for our timeline, I think that that's what we need to do. And so those are my two reasons for requesting that we reconsider.
So there's a motion to reconsider. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Barksdale. Any discussion? Ms. Hinojosa?
I'm not clear, Trustee Moya, are you proposing to an amendment that uses the word utilization?
Yes. What
Well, I'm sorry, let me just be clear. She hasn't made the motion on the wording yet.
Oh.
This is just a motion to reconsider.
It's
So
just
first-
a motion to reconsider.
And then we'll talk about the actual wording, just to be clear. Okay, if there's no further discussion on the motion to reconsider, all those in favor of reconsidering this item, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 6-3. Okay, so now, Ms. Moya, do you want to make a modification to the?
Okay. So, Board, I move that on Section 5 of our resolution on item 5.1, that the language read, "The board supports the district's development of a facility utilization plan on or before June 30th, 2014." And then in the second sentence, it would also read, "The facility utilization plan shall," et cetera, et cetera.
So one more time
There's-
for my sake.
I'm sorry?
One more time for our sake so we can capture it. Utilization plan.
The
board supports the district's
development of a facilities utilization plan on or before June 30th, 2014. And also change the second section to read, second sentence, to read, "The facility utilization plan shall include specific plans," and et cetera, because none of that language changed.
Is there a second? Is it-
Second on the language?
A second on the motion. On the motion. Is there a second? Ms. Barksdale's seconded. Okay, is there any discussion? Ms. Barksdale, then Mr. Snyder.
Ms. Moya, I want to back up and support your original problem that you had with this resolution, which is we need to make sure our community understands what it is we're doing. And so that there's nothing black boxed or nebulous or esoteric. We want to make sure people understand. And I also want to make sure people understand that in reconsidering this motion, we are not talking about the facility master planning process of 2008, 9, 10. Not sure what period that covered, but it was wide and broad and not our best work as a district. So if I understand what it is you intend to convey with this plan, it is something that will reflect this district's values, our core, our morals, in terms of how we serve students best. I can support that.
Mr. Snyder? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I think the reason I voted against the original motion, it's getting late. I'm concerned that the language weakened the strength of the term facility master plan, and I would like to see that accomplished. And so, does utilization change that in any way? I mean, does it go back to that original intent of working on the development of a facility master plan? That's my question. I mean, I think you need to be specific. That's why I didn't want the guiding principles in there. So,
I'll let Ms. Moya
yeah.
answer.
Trustee Tice, I believe that it does. I believe that it retains the what I believe to be the original intent of the language. And I also believe that it does not provide an avenue by which community members could confuse this particular action and this particular effort with the facility master plan of 08, 09, 10, whichever 10. I was just going along with what my colleague said, to make sure that there is no confusion about what this is intended to be and how it is different from something that occurred previously.
Ms. Barksdale, did you?
I just was going to say, I think the update to the language reflects a process that is more dynamic and more comprehensive than the previous language. You don't talk about 110 facilities and 86,000 kids and boundaries and transfers and, just under a facility master plan. It has to do with utilizing all of our resources. That's it. So I'm happy with the improvement to the language.
Okay. Any other?
May I say something?
Yeah, Dr. Christopher,
Yes.
please just raise your hand.
Mr. President, Trustee of the Board, Trustee Barksdale, and to just put a finer point on what you said, a facility master plan should be a living document. Austin as a city changes very fast. We've had intensity and growth in North Central, which used to be somewhere else 10 years before that, and will be somewhere else 5 years from now, and a mix of different things. So much like the strategic plan, all these plans and all of our work, just like the budget, should be living and breathing. And as we see things that aren't quite fitting or aren't going well, whether it's boundaries or a transfer policy or an actual order of when we build things, I think y'all should get very comfortable with the notion of making those adjustments in real time. And while I understand that June 30th is a significant milestone in the development, it won't be the last time you take an action on that plan or make adjustments or edits, just like every year you make adjustments and changes to your strategic plan. And as you know, some people knew at whatever point, but basically, every several years, there's going to be a big change in state accountability. This board knows it has to go back to a strategic plan and change all of your measurable outcomes to match the new accountability system. If you had a facility master plan today that we were using or that I inherited at the beginning of my administration, if a bond were to pass in May, can't advocate, sorry. If a bond were to pass in May, then that facility plan I would expect would change dramatically because of the passage of a new bond. So I understand the point of that significant benchmark, but you can anticipate, and I'm sure Amber Ellens will ensure that we get calendared the right mini touch points along the way so that you hear, like I said before, a significant update, halfway during the school year, and then getting you to your first big benchmark in June, and then plan to make many more adjustments over time. There's no way you can build a plan and have 10 years and sit it on a shelf. You'll have to make adjustments, and it's $892 million that we'll start spending almost right away in some cases. People need to know when different things are happening and which school sites and how and when and what problems that we have along the way. So it'll be very important that that we lay that out for you as an administration, and y'all, weigh in on that and make those changes when appropriate.
Mr. Snyder?
Too many hands up. This is pretty much exactly why I didn't want to continue the conversation that we had previously this evening, because I think we're still not in a clear understanding of exactly what we're talking about, whether it's a master plan, a utilization plan. I actually had efficiency and utilization plan because it's part of it. But, I don't know that we're actually at a point where the board really understands what we're talking about planning. And as Dr. Korshoff can tell you, we've had more than a few conversations about this. And I mean, I'm one that really wants a master plan for our facilities. I mean, I don't care what you call it. I mean, you can call it a widget exercise or whatever you want to do. But I strongly believe we need some kind of master plan for our facilities. I completely agree with Dr. Korshoff that it's done, here it is. It's a living document. It's going to change from year to year to year. When we pass another bond, whether it's this one or 2, 5, 10 years from now, whatever the number is, it's going to change. The point I'm at, though, is that while I strongly support this particular motion, I don't like how we got here at all. And, I'm really at a quandary as to whether, yes, no, whatever it does, but, I mean, I would have much preferred that we just left it that we were going to have facility master plan when we had the initial discussion.
Did you Go ahead.
Did you? Robert, I understand. But I really truly believe that continuing to use that particular language is too confusing to our community, and it makes people think we're doing the same thing we did before. I do not want that. I want this to stand on its own and to not have anyone think that it's the same soup warmed over from 2010. That is was my whole objective in all of my comments earlier, was that I didn't want those words used because I felt like it was going to dredge up too much heartburn and too much pain for too many people.
Ms. Ellens and then Ms. Hinojosa.
I just would like to say I could also support that direction. I think that the purpose of this resolution is to ensure voters that we will be good stewards of their tax dollars, bottom line. We're getting caught up in details that really are not the purpose of this document. And so I think that I appreciate the change and I would support it.
Ms. Hinojosa.
Well, I did not support reconsideration of this resolution. I can support a change in the language now that we're here if we still, by utilization plan, mean what President Torres, you explained to the group that you thought it meant, because I'm on the same page with that. And if we're talking about having the flexibility to, if we can't figure out a certain category that affects utilization, that we figure out a timeline for actually figuring that out as well, but not to come up with something that's half-baked because we've got this deadline hanging over our head. That I don't want to do.
Well, and I
Ms. Moya.
may I be recognized? Thank you.
Please.
I believe that that's exactly where we are. I think that's where I am. I'm just, and I realize, Amber, you're right. We're getting caught up in some details, that are taking us down a rabbit hole. I understand, but I don't. And my intention is not to change anything about what Mr. Torres described to us, because that is what I understand this to be.
Thank you.
Ms. Tice.
To be clear, were you also asking that the language after the date 2014 be removed too, or as soon as possible thereafter? So you're basically
Right.
making a stop after 2014?
Yes, I removed that language.
Okay, and just removing that, and then you're substituting utilization for master.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bradley.
I don't have a particular problem with the verbiage. However, I'm with Mr. Schneider. I am disappointed with the process by which we are back here on this particular item. As a board, we took a vote. And I believe that we can get to where we need to be with the original motion. Because as a board, at least I would like to think that our value is and always what's best for kids. So whether we change the verbiage or we keep the original motion shouldn't matter. But it's something that Miss Moya said earlier about being strong. What term did you use? Strong what? Strong arm?
Something like that.
Strong-armed. And right now, I'm feeling strong-armed because this is a community that cares for its children. And it's a community that's going to go out and vote for the new additions of gyms and classrooms and science rooms and the computer rooms and all of the other facilities that we have in the bond, because I don't believe at any point we did not put children first in this bond. So if we're going to discount parents and this city that loves their children, then I have a problem with that, because I really believe that this city loves its children. It's going to come out and vote for this bond. And I don't believe that we should let anyone dictate how we do anything when it comes to this bond. So if they don't want to participate, don't participate. But how dare you think that you can come up here and try to twist our arms with some nonsense. I just won't stand for it. So it's kind of like that for me.
Any other, Dr. Sharpen?
So then, I mean, I just want to ask the one question. I mean, we did as a board, I mean, officers worked on this language too. The original the language in here is our AISD language. And the board knows that it's been approached by multiple stakeholder groups to have very specific language that those stakeholder groups wanted. And we said no to all of it. And this is the language that we came up with as a district. And so while I know I'm not a voting member, I still go back to the original recommendation for tonight's meeting, that you stick with the language that you worked on, and I was there with the facility master plan thing, and yes, it was horrible. Maybe when we get to the naming of the plan, we can change it. But I would just say, like, it is an industry standard to say facility master plan. People know what that means. I think when we say task force, that is more of what people remember and react to. I'm not really sure it's the FMP part as much, but I agree with you. I know it's got some stuff. And so just to be true to how we got here for tonight, which is not anyone's language other than our own, and all those people know it because they gave us they put a lot of pressure on us. This is our AISD language with our officers and whoever the other trustees were who came to that meeting, looked at, and that we circulated to the board, and that we've had posted. That's ours. It's no one else's. And so, and then just to what Ms. Moya said, I mean, I think, and we can live with utilization. I know from a facility standard, people kind of cringe at that because it's not broad enough. It kind of excludes by their definition, I know, the stuff around systems and the HVAC and all those things, and utilization connotes only one part of a facility master plan. So perhaps to what Trustee Ellen said, instead of getting hung up on the terms in it, I'd like to just see us go back to what we did, which was on this paper, And that was AISD's work with our trustees. And when we get to the actual document and before we start the process again and do anything publicly, we do take the time that y'all are talking about. Did you ever find your annual agenda planning calendar? Okay, well, anyway, so never mind. I think we go back and when we have that discussion in June, we let's go back and talk about the charge of our work in a facility master plan. Let's go back and talk about, okay, why is it blank? Let's go and
This March.
talk about, the principles and the things that we wanted to be sure that we covered. But for the purposes of tonight, I think a lot of you worked on this resolution pretty hard. And all those stakeholder groups that Ms. Bradley just referenced, I mean, we did a ton of pushback to set our direction ourselves. And they know that. And they were able to do their resolutions because the board had settled. And once the board sort of settled with our circulation of language, and we, got it up for posting purposes as we do, no one communicated to the administration that there was any challenge. So perhaps you just want to kind of go back from there, and then we'll take our notes and create you a great agenda item that raises all these issues. So when you have your discussion in June or whenever it is about the first facility planning conversation, to start that, we can start wrestling these issues down before we really begin the hard work of putting together a plan that will have some details and can highlight the principles y'all talked about, but that we can start again fresh with our new process and kind of, but use this as our guiding, commitments. But if I could make another recommendation, it would be stick with what you have, stick with what many of you worked on and proposed.
Okay, is there any other discussion? I'm sorry, Ms. Ellens.
So this is a process question. With regard to that recommendation, do I amend? No. If I would be willing to go back and make a motion to go back to the original wording. I'm not sure if I amend her motion or if we vote.
It depends on how you want to make the motion. If you want to make a motion to amend her wording, you can do that, or we can vote this motion out and then take up a separate motion. So,
Well, okay, I will amend the motion on the floor to. I have to ask.
you can. Yeah,
Pardon me.
you can ask her to amend.
I would like to amend the wording to go back to the original and follow the superintendent's recommendation to work on a name that best fits the process when we get to it. If you would be amenable to that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Ellens, I'm not.
Okay.
I still hold to my original position that particular phrasing has a lot of bad places for a lot of people, and I don't want us to be there on anything we
I
do.
do understand that, and I hear that a lot, and it's actually one of the comments that I've made along the way. So I would be willing to support your original motion. It's just that I think we could come up with a better name later if we're willing to discuss that.
Oh, Mr. Steiner.
Ms. Moya, with all due respect, I mean, the fundamental elements of whatever you call this are going to be the same. And, I don't think that simply having a different name is going to make things any more palatable to people once some of these discussions start happening. So, I would really like to see us stick with either what we've got or, in my perfect world, we have consensus about what we're talking about here. And, that's one of the kind of, I'm not sure we're there yet for me's. But, for us to get bogged down over a name, I mean, it doesn't lend well to actually doing what's necessary when we move forward on this stuff. And,
Okay.
my fundamental position is that the name's not going to be what's important to people. It's going to be what's involved in the process and what actually gets changed, and we take a look at in terms of the facilities and all the efficiency and utilization issues that go along with it. So I can't support it.
That's fine, and, you know, and vote your conscience however you feel. But I have to, I mean, I, as you did, lived through that fiasco. And I, you know, sitting on this dais making decisions about things, do not want any of our taxpayers, our parents, our community members to think that we are regurgitating that thing. You know, and by using that language, I think for some, maybe many, that would be how they feel. And I don't see why we would want to even go there. I understand the reasons and this whole definition stuff about facilities master plan. I get all that. You know, but I just can't see why, you know, we won't, you know, to use or take lessons learned and know that that one little thing, you know, is very uncomfortable for a whole lot of people. And so, you know, again, you know, I'm trying as best I can to support this because I think it's important and we need to have it. But I also think that we need to make sure that the terminology isn't confused. And I don't know any other way to do it than to change a word.
Ms. Deitch.
I appreciate Trustee Moya's concern about past reactions to this name. I also, I'm going to argue for clarity, and facility master plan is an industry term, as Dr. Karstaffen indicated. And there are a lot of people in my part of Austin who were not part of that discontent, and they're going to look at facility utilization plan, and they will think it's limiting, as opposed to a facility master plan, which is more of an overarching plan. So I'm going to go ahead and advocate that we just leave it as it is.
As is meaning,
As it was originally written in our documents, as we originally agreed upon in a committee meeting. So that the first sentence says the board supports the district's development of a facility master plan on or before June 30th, 2014.
okay. Thank you for clarifying. Okay. Anything else? Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Since, Ms. Barksdale, since you were the seconder to my motion, how do you feel about use of the term facilities master plan and leaving it alone the way it was originally proposed?
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, to think about going there. It was a very tumultuous time in the district, and it was all consuming in terms of our approach, how we ended up where we did and then didn't, and people that support this district in very significant ways walked away from us. It was a very painful process. That's one side of things. The other side is, and again, this is a difficult pill to swallow. I agree with Trustee Snyder that there are going to be challenging conversations had under this umbrella, no matter what we call it, right? There are going to be people that are not happy with directions we have to go, no matter how we decide things. And I think that if we can make the most significant commitment possible to community input for this process, I could swallow the facility master plan part a little bit better. I mean, but I agree with you 100%. But we didn't get it right in terms of community notifications about what was going on, what the discussions were. You know, I don't think that's very debatable. These are things that affect people's children and their lives and their homes and where they live and where they move and their experience in this city. So it's something that it would be difficult for me to fully get on with, just because of it's such recent history, but because of the enormous importance of the bond and having as many supporters at the table as possible for the important work that needs to be done for kids, as Ms. Bradley said, additions and better floors and better buildings. I mean, there is dignity attached to the types of facilities we offer for our children, and for the larger purpose of having that be accepted by voters. And I also agree with Ms. Bradley with the point that I believe Austin is a community that cares about its kids. I know that's the case. That's why we're all sitting here. And I also think, to Trustee Ellen's point, it's a community that has expectations of this board regarding financial stewardship and facility stewardship. So with that, with my speech, I can say it would be with some heartburn that I could get on board with just going with the original motion, because I think it says that this board is serious about stewardship, is serious about supporting kids. And I don't think it's a diss to parents. I think how we got here may be a diss to parents, but I don't think it's says anything bad about kids to support it in its original state.
Mr. Snyder?
I move to call the motion.
Okay,
You mean
there's,
call the question, call the motion?
Call the question.
okay, all those in favor of voting on the motion, this is calling the question, so it's to end debate. Raise your right hand. This is calling.
So just to end debate.
End debate. 9-0 to end debate. Okay, so at this point in time, there's a motion to change the word from the original wording from facility master plan to facility utilization plan in 2 places on section 5, and leaving the original timeline in section 5. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Snyder.
Now I have another motion when you're
Okay.
done. I move to adopt the original language that is in the motion on page 4 of
right.
our agenda materials.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Tice. Okay, any discussion? Okay, then all those in favor of the motion to use the original wording in section 5, please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3. Motion passes unanimously. Motion passes. All right. All right, at this point in time, we will now end for a second time this evening the televised portion of tonight's meeting and continue on with our dialogue, the remaining item. Dr. Garstafson.
Yes, sir. Right. Or 6.